In this box, I have the brand new Fujifilm X-T4 camera, and this is the actual production model that I paid for with my own money. None of that pre-production nonsense with any of its firmware issues or little quirks. This is the real deal. And we're gonna get it completely set up today for full-on video production. Because this camera is supposed to be an absolute beast for photo and video. So we want to get it completely optimized and ready for doing video today, because that's what I focus on this channel is filmmaking. So let's get into it. Once you have this camera out of the box, you want to get it fully charged up with that USB-C cable. Get that brand new battery rocking, because this has a much longer battery life than the X-T3. And then we're going to get it powered on. Now, the next thing I want to do is actually throw a lens on there so we can start seeing what we're working with. So I'm going to grab this lens, which is my Rokinon 16mm lens. Now, this is a manual lens and it is Canon EF mount, whereas here we've got an X mount. So I picked up a little adapter from K&F Concept. Now, this thing was about 20 bucks and it doesn't have any electronics on it. All it allows me to do is take X mount and put an EF mount lens on there. It doesn't do any electronic connections for autofocus or image stabilization from the lens or anything like that. So I'm gonna get this popped on now. And I love using manual lenses, especially these Rokinons. I've talked about this so many times in the past, but my personal belief is that the Canon EF glass is the absolute best glass to invest in, because it's so adaptable to so many camera systems. I use it on my Sony cameras. I throw it on the Blackmagic 6K, which has an EF mount. We've got it on the Fujifilm here. So now that we have the lens on there, you're gonna think, all right, let's start taking some pictures. I'm in still mode. Pressing the shutter button down and nothing's happening. Is it broken? Did I not set it up right? Let me switch to movie mode. Pressing the shutter button, nothing's happening. Now, this is what I ran into when I first started setting up this camera. I could not figure out for the life of me how to get this thing to take a photo or take a video clip. I was just like, did I get a dud? Is this a piece of junk? Maybe I won't use Fujifilm cameras. But then as I started diving through this massive user manual that they send you, I found nothing, and it was not helpful at all. So after I went through that, I started just going through these menus, digging and digging and digging. Well, once I was diving deep in there, I found the setting that I need to get this thing working. Go all the way down to the little gear wrench icon, go over and go to button dial settings, then go over into that, and then you want to arrow down until you get to page 2. And here we have shoot without lens, and that's off. You want to click into that and turn it on. Because there's no electronics, the camera doesn't even know that there's a lens mounted right now. It really has no clue. There we go. Now we're recording a video clip, and of course you can switch over to still mode with that brand new toggle switch, and right away you can start shooting pictures and your settings don't change at all. I absolutely love that. The fact that you can switch back and forth between photos and videos immediately is incredible without changing any of your settings. You can have each side of it set up how you like. It's kind of like partitioning a computer for you nerds out there. So on the camera icon, I'm gonna go over to movie mode and I'm gonna select 4K 16:9, and we have it at 23.98 right now, but I'm gonna go up to the full 59.94. Now, I don't always shoot at 60 frames per second because I don't always wanna shoot in slow motion on a 24 frames per second timeline, but I wanna show you the max capabilities of this camera in video, so that's why we're doing 4K 60 right now. Now, back into that menu, you can select the maximum amount of megabits per second. Now, this is going to change how high quality the footage is. If you go at the lowest setting of 100, it's compressing that file. Now, I have a 128 gigabyte SD card in this camera right now, and it can only shoot at 170 megabits per second. So that's actually the fastest I can go if I want to shoot internal to the SD card here. And that shows me that I will get 99 minutes of record time. We are going to be setting up the Atomos Ninja V later on in this video so we can take advantage of 422 10-bit. Let's keep moving on. Let's go into the file format. Now, I want to take advantage of 10-bit, so I'm going to put this into MOV H.265. Now let's go down to movie compression, and if we want to shoot in 60 frames per second, we have to use long GOP. If you switch to all intra, it'll automatically downgrade your frames per second to 29 frames per second. So we want to go long GOP on the compression here. And then we have full HD high-speed recording. I'm gonna leave that off for now, and we'll dive into that later, but as you know, this camera can now shoot 240 frames per second at full HD 1080p. So that is pretty awesome. There are not a lot of cameras out there right now that are mirrorless or DSLRs that can shoot at 240 frames per second. So that's really cool, and we're gonna dive into the slow motion on this camera in another video. We're gonna get to F-Log now. So I have this set to SD card, shoot in F-Log, and then over HDMI, I also want it in F-Log because that's the flattest picture profile that we can do on the Fujifilm X-T4. Now, as you probably know and was announced, the X-T4 finally has in-body image stabilization, which is awesome, a great upgrade from the X-T3 because we all need image stabilization when we're doing that handheld footage. Now this has 6.5 stops of image stabilization, and it has 5-axis in-body image stabilization there on the sensor, which is just fantastic. So we're gonna leave that on by default, but I'm not gonna turn on the digital image stabilization they offer because you can see here in the menu that when you do that, it applies a crop factor of about 1.18. So another 10% more zoomed in. If you want to add any more image stabilization, just do it in post-production. And then we have image stabilization mode boost. I'm also going to leave that off because it applies even more of a crop, and that does that completely digitally in the camera. Now, zebra level, you can go anywhere from 50% all the way up to 100%. And I'm going to set mine to 70% because that's a good place for skin tones. If you start seeing zebras on your skin tones over 70, you definitely have them overexposed. But depending on the quality of skin and everything like that, you may want to lower your zebras all the way down to even 50% and make sure that once you start seeing zebras on certain skin tones that you don't expose past that. Next, we have the tally lights, and I love that you have the capability to turn these on or off. And you can just turn on the front or the back or both. And what I've actually set this to is the tally light is on in the front and in the rear. Basically, it's just a tiny little red light that lets you know when you're filming. So that's great for me because let's say that you're vlogging or something and you have this out in front of you, you'll see the light and you will know that you're recording and you don't have to wonder like, wait, did I hit record? And same thing if you're shooting from behind, you can just quickly see that light and see that you're rolling. The next setting we want to get to is our image quality. So we'll go down to that menu and film simulation. Currently I have set to standard. It's not going to add anything additional. There's all these new different settings you can do, classic chrome and negative and Eterna and bleach bypass, all those things. To me, they're a little bit gimmicky. I'm really never going to put a filter on my footage in camera and bake that in. The next thing we want to do is set our white balance to manual because auto white balance is terrible and it could change on you in the middle of filming. So if you're doing video production, you definitely want to set it custom. So we'll menu down to color temperature where you have the K, click into that, and it's set to 10,000 right off the bat, which is really warm. So we'll just menu this down to 0, and then I'm filming at 3200 Kelvin right now. So that's what I'm going to set the camera to. The next setting we're going to change is sharpness. Right now it comes at default with 0, but I don't want any extra image sharpening in camera because it just makes your footage look more digital. So I'm going to set this as low as I can at -4. If you're using manual lenses like I am, you need to set the focal length of the lens you're using in camera. So in mount adapter settings, I'm going to click into there. And then you have lenses 1 through 6, which is pretty cool. So if you have a whole set of manual lenses you're using, you can set up all the different custom ones that you use right here so you can quickly get into them. So your in-body image stabilization knows how to compensate accordingly. For lens 1, I'm going to set the focal length at 16 millimeters because that's what I've got on the camera here. The next big menu item here is autofocus and manual focus. Now, because I'm using manual focus, I really don't need any of these settings here except for making sure that the camera is set to manual focus, which I've already actually done with the little hard switch here in the front. There is a M, C, and S. Now, M is of course for manual, You can switch it over to C, which is for continuous, and then S, which is for single autofocus. So I've got it on manual now, and that's really all we have to do. I am gonna get a Fujifilm lens in the future so we can test out all the autofocus for you guys, see just how well it works and everything. So now moving on to microphone settings, you can set the internal and external mic settings to go 0 dB up or down, whichever way you need. I'm just gonna leave both those at the default for now, and then you have mic jack settings. Now this is pretty cool. Once you click into that, you can either select mic or line. So if you're using a soundboard, let's say you're doing an event or a wedding or something, and you want to tap your camera directly into the soundboard that the DJ or something has, he can give you a line out from the board. And you definitely want to set it to line for that, because if you set it to mic, it's going to be all distorted and it just will not sound very good. Now let's move into F-Log View Assist. So this is really cool. When you're shooting in F-Log, your image looks really flat. It doesn't look like it really has any color or contrast. But if you want a little bit of help so you can actually know how well to expose your image and see what it pretty much looks like with a LUT on, you can turn the F-Log View Assist on, which this is a brand new feature of the X-T4, so very cool. I'm gonna turn that on, and pretty much it puts it into Rec 709, which is your standard color space. We're gonna go into the button and dial settings. I'm gonna set up a couple of the custom function buttons. I'm not gonna do all of them, but what I really love about this is it shows you exactly where the custom button is on the camera with this little diagram, so that's super handy. So for the first function button, F1 on the top here, I am going to have that set to zebra settings. So I like that because I want to be able to quickly turn them on and off so I can see my image. So really quickly while I'm out shooting, I can just dial through that. It does zebra left, right first, which I think is funky, and then it just does zebra setting off. But I love that you can quickly turn that on and off. For the next one, function button 2 here in the front, I have that set to histogram. So again, I can quickly turn the histogram on and off when I'm out shooting. So that should pretty much do it for the settings that we need to get dialed in to start shooting video on this camera. Now, of course, you can go in and adjust the settings even more. They have this nice little touchscreen button now here on the side, so you can quickly go in and get to pretty much some of the settings that you're gonna change the most when you're using this camera. And I've actually already found this to be pretty useful. It's touchscreen, which of course can be a little bit finicky, but you can use this little joystick on the side to adjust it as well. We can definitely start filming clips now, and right away we are ready to start shooting video with this camera. But we want to get the most out of this camera. Like I said earlier, we want to shoot in 422 4K 10-bit ProRes files. So this is the part where we get the Atomos Ninja V set up on this. So this can be a real video production beast. So I'm gonna do a whole video in the future completely rigging out this camera for video production. I have a camera cage on the way coming very shortly from Small Rig, but until then, we're gonna get this set up nice and simple. So what I have here is a simple little cold shoe mount adapter, and I'm gonna slide that right into place here. And then I have the Atomos Ninja V here, and I just have a standard Sony NPF battery on there and a 500 gigabyte SSD. So a lot more storage for recording videos here. Now let's get an HDMI cable plugged in. So I just have this one from Small HD that is full size to micro HDMI. Another huge advantage of using the Ninja V on the X-T4 is that there are no record limits. So you could film for hours with this setup, whereas if you were filming internally on the X-T4, you could only film 30-minute clips, which would not work great for those weddings and live events. All right, so I see 60 frames per second is now coming into the Ninja V in UHD. Next, we're gonna go over to the record tab, and I can see that I'm in ProRes Lite. So on a 500 gigabyte SSD, that gives me an hour and 13 minutes of record time. Let's say we put that up to 422, we're getting 50 minutes, and then at the highest quality possible, HQ, we're only getting 33 minutes of record time on a 500 gigabyte SSD. There's just so much data pumping into this from the camera in 422, 10-bit, 4K, 60 frames per second in ProRes HQ. So obviously massive files. I don't think I need that much, so I'm gonna put it back to light, and that's, you know, plenty enough quality for me. And, you know, an hour of roll time isn't a ton, but you know what? I think it's worth it to get the max amount of quality out of the X-T4. It's just a really beautiful looking camera, very well made. And we haven't mentioned this yet, but it's super obvious. You guys know this. It has the flip out screen, which is absolutely fantastic, because if you want to do any vlogging at all, you definitely need a flip out screen so you can see when you're in focus and if you're exposed properly and what your framing is and everything like that. So the camera and Ninja V are completely ready to start shooting video, but for me, there's a few more things I want to add, and one of them is really important, and that is a variable ND filter. So I'm using this one from Tiffin. It's really simple, screws onto the front of the lens. All right, now I can go out and shoot in bright daylight and get a proper exposure with a nice wide open aperture. The next thing we need to add to this is a microphone so I can get some more high quality audio. And what I'm gonna do is add a little cold shoe mount to the top of the Ninja V, and this is just a basic one from SmallRig. And then one thing they did get rid of on the X-T4 that the X-T3 did have is a headphone jack. So we have to use a dongle and plug into the USB-C port here on the side and then go to 3.5 millimeters. So they do include this in the box, which is nice, but I don't like using dongles. That's very Apple of them to do this, but it'll work, I guess. So now I'm gonna grab just my basic studio headphones so that if I'm out filming, I can actually monitor my audio and see what's going on. Get that plugged in. So now we are all set up to get out there and start filming some professional video on the Fujifilm X-T4. And guys, if you want to see me completely rig out the X-T4 with a cage, a follow focus, and other video accessories, hit subscribe right now, because that video will be dropping on this channel soon and you do not want to miss it. All right, I'll see you guys in the next video.